Hey everyone, welcome back to Tactical Magic. This is Molly Mandelberg, your host, and we will be having a hopefully very helpful and insightful episode for you here today. One of the things that often can kick us in the butt or hold us back or keep us from actualizing everything we want to create in our lives is a tendency to people please or to put our need for validation outside of ourselves sometimes. So I have an expert on this topic with me here today. Hang on just a sec. We'll be right back. It's not just about mastering technology. It's not just about brand or messaging. It's not just about making more money. It's about showing up in a big way so your people can find you. This is about bringing your most wild and authentic self into the hustle and grind. Welcome to Tactical Magic, a business strategies podcast for the warrior goddess entrepreneur. Awesome. So joining me today is Lizzie Moult, a cognitive behavioral therapist and writer who is breaking all the rules when it comes to showing up in life, from ditching people pleasing to trusting her intuition to navigate life with passion and purpose. Lizzie has a down-to-earth way of bringing your essence to the forefront so you can express it fully and freely so you can create the life you want. Welcome, Lizzie.
Hello. Thanks so much for having me, Molly.
Yes, I'm so happy to have you here. So cognitive behavioral therapy, give us a breakdown of just what that means so anybody who doesn't know can get on board.
Okay. So cognitive behavioral therapy is all about relearning and changing our patterns and behaviors. So obviously the word behavior is there. And that's predominantly the key that I focus on with a lot of the work that I do. So I am also a bit of a life coach, but the behavioral stuff is where the magic's at. So especially when it comes to like people pleasing and seeking validation, these are behaviors. These are our actions. This is how we are moving in the world. So we are looking at breaking those down, learning what they're about, and then re-stepping to go, okay, how can I change my behaviors? So that's kind of cognitive behavioral therapy.
Awesome.
And there's a bit of mindset stuff, but it's
totally
basically
so looking
behavior.
at the patterns that we already have in our lives and saying, this maybe is something I thought is just the way I am or how I operate, and looking at whether that's true, whether that needs to be true, and is that pattern really serving me? And if not, what can I choose instead? And how can I actually get supported to repattern my life in such a way that it actually helps me?
That's exactly it right there.
Awesome. Yeah. So I always love to start by asking, what's that journey been like for you? Because I know oftentimes we're teaching something that we need to learn ourselves, or we become an entrepreneur somehow circuitously because we were walking this journey. So what was the journey of doing this as your profession like for you, and how did you sort of come to it?
How funny is this? So I was working with a woman. I was wanting to be a speaker. I was running an event and I was like, okay, I need to be a better speaker, blah, blah, blah. And as I was going through her process, I realized I kept seeking validation from her. I was like, oh, it's just not this and it's just not that. Like, I can do better. I can be this and I can be that. I kept putting on all these like little girl syndrome situations. And then she's like, you don't need validation from me. And I was like, what? Like, what do you mean? And I was like, oh, something hit and like it flicked. And I was like, oh my goodness, I've been seeking validation. And that's like one of the biggest things that people pleasers do, because that's how we like understand the world. And so that was like the beginning of my journey of like, okay, well, why am I doing this? Like, like I'm this outgoing person. Everyone thinks I've got it all together. But when in actual fact, I'm continually asking people, and what I'm doing good enough? And I've been running businesses since I was 23, like either online or practical little things. So to know that when you hit the age of 35 and you've actually been seeking validation the whole entire time and didn't trust yourself, it was groundbreaking. So she said to me very similar, like, you teach your own wisdom. Like, your medicine that you need is what you're here to gift to the world. And I was just like, boom, right there. Like, that is my magic. And so I was like, I need to learn everything there is about this. So that's why I did some positive psychology and the cognitive behavioral therapy on what I was like already offering to like juice up what I'm here to do. Yeah.
Yeah. It's awesome. It's important stuff. So what are some of the sort of symptoms that we notice? I know you explained yours in your story, but what are some of the things we could be noticing for those of us who are people pleasers in life. What does it look like? How does it show up?
There's so many ways. The biggest one, I've also fallen witness to this, is being totally crushed when someone doesn't like you. People pleasers, our aim, right, is to make everyone happy. So when someone's not happy, oh my God, break my heart. What have I done wrong? How can I fix this, right? Like, number one. Another great one is people pleasers don't like saying no at all. Like, we're just here to please. So yes, yes, yes. We go to great lengths to avoid conflict. Again, a bit of a no situation. We might apologize way too much as well, because we're sorry that, we're here and that's happening, and why can't we make everything good? Mm-hmm. Also, people pleasers are really busy. Some of them, like, they're so busy because they take on so much responsibility because they're always saying yes. Things like they're overworking, like, doing extra hours, that sort of thing. I'm trying to think. Seeking validation is also, as I mentioned, one. And another one on a personal note is, like, we won't share our feelings with others because in case it hurts theirs. So if someone's hurt you and, like, said something really mean, you're like, okay, like, you don't turn around and go, no, get fucked kind of thing, because you're scared of hurting their feelings. So that's people pleasing. Like, there's a lot of ways that we do it, but yeah.
Yeah, totally. Another one that comes up, which is totally part of all of that, is this topic of hypervigilance, which I know can come up as a trauma response, or can come up as a, habit that we form around certain kinds of people in our lives, maybe addicts, maybe narcissists, or whatever, that we're trying to keep the peace at such a level that we're, like, over energetically aware of more than a person needs to be necessarily aware of in the world, so that we can, like, stop an issue before it even starts. And that, I think, can probably be part of that people pleasing thing too.
Yes, that's usually from that little moment. That's where the over responsibility comes in, because that hypervigilant, I can't even say the word now. You're just wanting to, like, look, and you're looking so far ahead and you're problem solving before something even happens. Like, you actually forget, you're not living in the moment anymore. You're totally detached from it. So anxiety and worry is just, it's there.
Yeah. And I mean, I think there are some people listening who are probably expert people pleasers, and heck yeah, we honor that in you if you're starting to notice that that's something you've got. But there's probably some ways that it's kicking you. I mean, that it's biting you in the ass, we'll just say. What are some ways that shows up? I mean, I imagine one of the ways is just not being authentic to what's really going on for you.
Yeah, like, the number one thing for most people pleasers is they, like, completely lose who they are. And that's worst case scenario. Like, we all please people. Like, we're all human. Like, we're actually designed to help others and lift people up. Like, it's not a bad thing, but it's when we're doing it incorrectly. So often if we go into that super people pleaser mode, we don't trust ourselves. And, like, that's the biggest thing that I see for a lot of people, entrepreneurs especially, because they're like, oh, I need to look after my VA. Like, they'll pay their VA, before they'll pay themselves. They'll pay other people and make sure everyone else is honky-dory before they look at themselves, and that's, like, one of the hugest things that I see with people. Also relationships. So people pleasing is a two-way street. Yes, it's ourselves that does the actions, but it's with that other person. As you said, some people are more triggered by certain people. So our relationships can really suffer if we don't look after our people pleasing ways at all.
What are some ways that shows up in a relationship?
Give us a relationship example first. There's so many relationships. Okay. Just trying to think. Let's go. Do you want to talk about business relationships, or do you want to talk about, like, so with clients and things? Let's go with that, because obviously there's a lot of people who have got clients and things. So saying yes to a client, even though they're going to be a handful, like, when you do that, like, what happens is, I've done this, like, like, I'm recovering still, like, I swear, like, it's been a few years, and still every now and again, I'm like, there's an odd occasion, I'm like, oh shit. But there was times where I'd take on a client because I'm like, I so desperately wanted the money kind of thing. And I'd say yes, I say all the right things. I knew I could help them, but I just had that gut feeling. Like that gut feeling, I overrided it with my brain because that was more important. Like, yes, I could get like tick off the boxes. Like, that's more important. Where I knew that that person was going to be a total nightmare. And that happened quite often. So what often happens is, when that scenario, well, for me in like my case, I start stressing about this person, and that's the thing, it's people pleasing, right? Like I worry about them. Like I'm going to upset them if I actually like change my mind. I'm going to upset them if I do X, Y, and Z. Like I'm continually thinking about someone else and not myself. Even in the case of like turning them down as a client. So yes, that's saying yes as opposed to saying no. And it's communication that really is the key here, like where people can't express what they actually need or their feelings around a situation.
Yeah, totally. And that can come up in personal relationships a lot too. And
Absolutely.
Yeah, totally. People losing themselves in a relationship because they're trying to make it right and make it good instead of being real about how they're feeling or asking for what they need or having needs in the first place, which can be really challenging.
Well, it's that expectation, right? Like we all have expectations. We have expectations for ourselves, we have expectations of others. But what most communication lacks is actually clearly outlining our expectations with the people we love and care about. And that also goes into like business as well with clients or contractors and stuff like that. Like we hit those like, head-butting moments. You're like, oh, damn, like I swear I told them this, but actually I didn't. Like it's, yeah, asking clearly for what you want.
Yeah. Yeah. And having boundaries of some kind too. And so, that whole, I think we're starting to bring the energy up of what this is creating in our lives as people pleasers. It's more anxiety, more stress, more fear to say what you really mean or say what you actually need in a situation. And in a professional setting, if you're not being honest with your team, your virtual assistant, whoever, you're not going to get what you need done. And it's not going to create the result that you want because you're trying to be too nice about it. In your personal relationships, if you're people pleasing, you're probably getting walked all over or over giving and not having that reciprocation, or seeking validation to the point where you're now incapable of giving yourself what you need in a situation or even knowing what it is that you need. So there's a lot of different ways that it can harm us. What are some of the big lessons that people can learn in the overcoming of the people pleasing?
Some of the biggest lessons. I think the biggest one for me is like you can't be everything to everyone. As a reformed people pleaser, like still on the journey, like you just cannot please everyone and you have to focus on yourself. Like that is the number one thing. Like until you can trust your vision, your purpose, your mission, and have that in harmony, like just like full solid, like, I am at one with self, you finally let go of other people's expectations. People, throughout, like, stop giving a shit about what other people think, right? Like it's so easier said than done, but the only way to do that is to focus on self. It's to stop apologizing for yourself. It's, dropping the excuses about why you do or don't want to do something because you trust the words that you speak. Yeah, that's probably a part of it. And I think one other thing as well, like there's a level of discomfort that goes through this as well. Like nothing is easy. Well, there is things that are easy, but like through the healing journey, like there are moments, and it's the same with like when you're in business or like a relationship, like there's always ebbs and flows, and you have to ride through that discomfort at times to be able to push through, being able to go, okay, I've let go of this need to like seek my validation, or, I'm a chronic yes person. Like that first time you say no, say for example, like it may be the hardest, most excruciating thing you've ever done, but doing it once just sets you up to go, okay, I've done it once, I can do it again. And a bit of my philosophy when it comes to people pleasing is choose one area of your life and focus there first. Like choose one thing, like what's the one thing that you're going to change today to like make it better tomorrow? and
Yeah.
keep those small increments. Yeah.
I mean, yeah. And just noticing that uncomfortable, that discomfort is a muscle that you're building, that at first it's going to be really scary and really hard to say no to someone or to set a boundary or to like recognize you're on the verge of people pleasing and like reel it back in. That is a comfort zone that we're trying to now expand to greater, to having the capacity to say no, to having the choice of what actually works for you in any given moment. And that discomfort is something to learn how to sit with, not to avoid at all costs. And I think that's one of the things that we're doing as people pleasers is we're avoiding discomfort at all costs. We're avoiding letting people down or hurting their feelings or, you know, trying to maintain some sense of everything's okay and everybody likes me all the time. And to recognize that you liking you and you being okay with you is more important than any of that. That's like a learned skill. It's a learned skill that we practice to get to. Do you have some like strategies or tools to start giving ourselves that validation that we so desperately need as people pleasers?
It's a journey. It's like I can't prescribe one thing that's going to fit everybody at all. It's one of those things, but I just want to just agree with you. It's like the feelings. So to honor the feelings, our own feelings and how we feel about something and take acknowledgement of those. One of the greatest tools that I use is journaling. You can really, writing down your words, you can finally see how you feel. I think a lot of people don't, understand that power of like, oh, okay, like that's actually how I feel. So writing through scenarios often helps with the feelings involved with it. This person said X, Y, and Z. It made me feel like X, Y, and Z, like let it rip, like put your feelings on paper and see your lessons. So I would say probably journaling, but it's acknowledging that you're actually capable of change and acknowledging that you have, the people pleasing tendency, because once you can see that you have it, so identifying those patterns, you can then ask those big questions as well, why do I do this? Like the process is big. Like it's not just, I'm going to fix it tomorrow. It's like, well, okay, why does this person make me feel like that? And question, have that curiosity. And that's why, as I said earlier, like, choosing the one thing, start small, like, and then really focus on that, like that one thing, like, how can I bring a level of awareness to this? How can I rebuild this? How can I choose a different way to approach this? What's going to call in courage for me to like take action, to change it, like there's a big thing here to like, we just want to fix it. But unfortunately, we have to keep trying and trying and trying and experimenting, because when we're first learning something, there's new things going on.
It doesn't come naturally at first.
It doesn't always come naturally.
Totally.
But I will give you this one thing, like we need to take away assumption, because that's of others. So coming really back to self would probably be, and like having the awareness to catch yourself, be where to start.
Yeah.
And then writing as much as you can through that process.
Yeah. How do I feel about this? Why do I feel this way about this? What is it that's triggering me about this situation? And awareness is really the hardest part. There's probably going to be a lot of places where we don't even notice that we are playing into ththese people-pleasing tendencies. And then some situations where we're like, oh, I'm doing that thing where I want this person to like me really bad.
I'm gonna like, here's the biggest breakthrough I ever had. Feelings, right? So this is the crucial key, like I mentioned just before. When you feel a rise of emotion, take note. So if you get angry, frustrated, even like moments of joy, like it's actually good to still like celebrate those moments, because often we just like, oh yeah, whatever happened, like it was so good, like we don't celebrate those. So like journaling those sometimes is really good to see the difference, because when we get those rise of emotions, like, that person pissed me off, like that person, like, oh, I'm like so resentful because like, why would they ask me to X, Y, and Z, like those emotions is what's the triggering moments that we need to focus on. because usually with those rise of emotions, we want to react. And that's where the people pleasing comes in, because that's the behavior.
Mm-hmm. Totally. I also want to highlight something you said, which I think is a really valuable distinction, which is that I'm a person who has people pleasing tendencies. Like I've already said it a couple times, I'm a people pleaser on this episode. And to separate I am something versus I am someone who has these tendencies is like such a valuable gap to put right there, because it's no longer now your identity that you have to unpack. It's a quality about how you're behaving that can be rewired. So that's a really beautiful distinction to make. I think that I want to make sure people are hearing. Maybe being a people pleaser or being, the identity of anything that you've labeled yourself as is not the most valuable way to view it.
No.
But being someone who has this quality, who has this tendency, that suddenly makes it just automatically something that can be looked at, that can be changed and transformed and chosen differently.
Well, that's it. Like, there's so many components to being a people pleaser. Like, honestly, there's like a list ridiculously long about the qualities of a people pleaser.
Yeah.
It's like, well, you're not going to have them all. I don't have them all. Like, I know my qualities, but that's the thing. Like, it's those maybe 5 behaviors that are mine, like, oh, I've learnt those. I've grown those. Like, yeah, like being a people pleaser. It's like we're giving ourselves a label to live up to, but no one wants that label.
Yeah, I know you've mentioned one of the important things to start transforming that is to learn how to have and set boundaries. So what are some boundary insights that you could share with us?
Boundary insights. Boundaries, once again, it's a big thing to put up a boundary. Like, I like to think of boundaries as our personal like white picket fence. Like, I like everything to look pretty. So, I've never had a white picket fence in my life, but in my personal realm, I'm like, I've got a beautiful white picket fence. I've got like a nice little rose garden archway where the gate is. I like to think of the gate as the thoroughfare for like our energy. Because once again, people pleasing is give and take, right? That is a boundary. So do we let someone in through our gate, or are we going to let like our energy out? Like, how much is going out and how much is going in? So the boundaries often is like, how much of other people's energy are we going to like, let in, or are we going to like push all of ours out onto them? Like, it's really important to note that. So when I think of a boundary, it's knowing like my values. Once again, that comes back to knowing yourself so well that you don't have to question what you stand for. Once again, that rise of emotion comes up. You're like, oh, that really pissed me off. So why? Why did it piss you off? In there is like beliefs. That's the boundaries that you need to start looking at. I recently worked with a woman who, I'm just going to use a personal example. Her mum wasn't particularly well, and she was always driving her to and from the hospital. Yes, that was really lovely. However, it was causing her to like have so much resentment about like, why am I the only one doing it? My brothers and sisters live close enough. Why aren't they doing it? Like, my family life, my work life, it's all going downhill. All my time is spent driving to and from the hospital, so like, well, what's the boundary here? Like, you keep saying yes. So what needs to happen? Like, find the compromise. Boundaries aren't necessarily just put the fence down. It's how can that energy move between two people?
Mm-hmm.
Can we compromise? Is it a hard no? Because I know in myself, like, that's what I value. Or is it, okay, well, we're going to compromise. Or actually, I'm willing to do that because I have enough energy to give to you.
Mm-hmm.
Like, boundaries, it really depends on the situation and with the person and their personal like background and behaviors on the situation. But putting them in place helps you to protect your energy. Like, at the end of the day, I need to look after myself. So if anyone's going to take something away from this episode, a boundary is there for you to look after you. It's not that you're a bad person for saying no. It's not that you're a bad person for like, stating your truth. You're actually just being honest with yourself. And that is pretty magical.
Yeah, totally. It's a valuable place to start and to recognize if there is that discomfort there, something doesn't feel right, there's an opportunity in that, either to set a boundary of like, this doesn't work for me, or to recognize it can work for you. And so the energy around it can change because you've now chosen that this is something you're willing to do, you have the capacity for. Or it might be an opportunity to now enroll other people into supporting you in the same thing, in, helping take mom to the hospital, or in trading off days, or in having your back energetically with your family so that you can manage the hospital stuff, or whatever the case may be. And oftentimes I think that that's just in life a really valuable thing to start noticing. If there's discomfort somewhere, what is this specific moment here to teach you? What's it asking you to look at? What's it asking you to acknowledge or be aware of, or choose differently, or engage with others in a new way because of? Like, what is this here to support you to grow into? Because oftentimes the same sort of situation will arise until we make that choice, or choose to change, or evolve in some way, or become more aware of how we operate in that situation.
That's the thing, like the key there is awareness, right? Like,
Yeah.
The amount of times, so when the lady that I worked with that I mentioned earlier, the first words I said was, I did it again. Like that was the first thing that came out of my mouth. The amount of lessons that sometimes that we need to learn to like get that slap in the face. You're just like, oh man. Mm-hmm. But, I think that comes like with age, we do get like, we learn the lessons, we like start applying things, but we're also, I think, more open and willing to retry things as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, having that awareness, it's a muscle that we all need to like grow and practice. Hands down.
Definitely. So I know a lot of people are probably listening to this and thinking, oh gosh, I need support to maybe start looking at this, maybe stop letting people walk all over me, or putting myself in their path so that they keep walking all over me. What are some ways that people can get a hold of you, or connect with you, or follow you online?
Sure. So I've got some journal prompts. If anyone wants them, like seriously game changer, they'll start you from like the beginning and get you all the way to like changing patterns. They're on my website. I've also got a quiz if you're curious about your own tendencies. And people pleasing. There's a few archetypes of people pleasers, so that's really cool. So you can find all of that over on my website, and it's Lizzie Moult, so LIZZIE Moult, MOULT.com. Awesome. And yeah, if you want to hang out on Instagram, I'm over there too. So
what's your Instagram handle so we can go follow?
Lizzie_Moult.
Okay, cool. So go follow Lizzie on Instagram. And I am a huge fan of quizzes. I actually teach people how to make quizzes like that. So definitely go take the quiz, find out what kind of people pleaser you may be, or people pleaser tendencies you may have, and learn some of that stuff over there. You've shared so much wisdom on this episode already, but I always like to ask the question, are there any last words of wisdom that you want to leave people with?
I think my only one is, that's the thing, like you can't be everything to anyone, like everyone. So come back, focus on you, and learn to trust, your feelings, emotions, and be okay with the discomfort that may arise.
Taking care of you is so important if you want to take care of anyone else.
Yeah.
Yeah. Really valuable.
Replenish the cup.
Yeah. Fill your cup first. Definitely. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Lizzie. It was such a pleasure having you on the show.
Thanks so much, Molly. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. And thank you everyone out there for listening. We love podcast listeners. So make sure to follow Lizzie and let us know if you enjoyed this episode. If you did, if you know anybody who maybe resonates as a people pleaser, make sure to send this episode to them with loving kindness. And hey, I enjoyed this. Maybe you'd like it too. But yeah, sharing podcasts with your friends is a fun way to create new conversations and openings for discussions, maybe even with your partner or your business partner or anybody else you may have been doing this with, to invite them into the discussion with you and have maybe a candid conversation about how things are going between you based on this kind of context. Or don't, whatever works for you. But thanks again for listening to this show, and we will catch you next week for another episode of Tactical Magic. Whatever happens, keep asking big questions and taking bold action, because you are here for a reason. Bye.